Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Al Richards here. Welcome to the other side of addiction. I am actually sad today because my co-host Lori Warburton was not able to make it. She's got some family things that she needs to take care of. And as we've said on the show many times, or even not on the show, family comes first. So we want to make sure that she's okay. And I send my prayers out to her earlier, hoping that everything's going to be fine. Hey, we got a great show for you today. So we have a lovely young lady by the name of Janessa. Janessa and I met at a class last summer that was in Salt Lake. We were taking a class. What do you call it? Kind of like a self-help type class?
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of our exercises that we were doing during the class is we had to get into groups. And I think it was a group of 3, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Group of 3 or 4. And we had to share some things. And I started sharing the story about my wife's addiction. And I looked over and Janessa was crying. And I thought, I may have done something wrong. I said something or triggered something. But anyway, her and I had the opportunity to chat. And I got to know a little bit more about her story. So as we've said here on the show many times, an addiction is an addiction. You know, I was talking to a lady yesterday who she had a food addiction, eating, and her and I was on the phone. Geez, I bet you for 45 minutes talking. But a lot of the things that she shared are things that I heard through my wife's addiction, through things. But before we get into that, let's learn a little bit more about you, Janessa. So are you from the Salt Lake Valley? Is this where you grew up?
Yeah. So I grew up Kaysville, and then we moved to West Bountiful, and I lived there since I was 12.
Wow.
And my parents fixed up an old Victorian home, and that was what we did. Growing up, we fixed it up, and we were homeschooled, and I had a lot of siblings, and
wow,
it was a really good upbringing. I really enjoyed it.
What was it like being homeschooled?
It wasn't as widely accepted as it is now.
Yeah.
Now everyone's like, it's the big thing now. But back then it wasn't. So it was a little challenging because there was a lot of stereotypes of homeschooling. So it was a little bit of a struggle, but I really loved it. And I'm glad that my mom did that. 7 kids. She was
my gosh,
a rock star.
Yeah, that is a rock star.
She did. I don't know how she did it. I have 3 boys, and I'm like thinking of trying to homeschool 7 kids. Just blows my mind. She was awesome. So
wow, yeah, that's a heck of a woman right there, to be able to be a housewife and a mom to 7 kids and a school teacher and basically a wife. You know,
we always joked around like she's a doctor, she's a school teacher, she's a walking dictionary, she's a awesome mom. You know, she did really well. So
wow.
Well, but I grew up in Utah my whole life. So
cool. Yeah. And I mean, what is it that you like to do? What do you enjoy? I mean, I know you got 3 boys, and I'm sure you enjoy the heck out of them. But what else is it that you like to do?
Oh, well, honestly, the past few years, I feel like I've heard this on your podcast a couple times where people are like, I'm trying to find myself.
Oh, okay.
And I really related to that because I'm like, I feel like I'm doing that. You know, the past maybe 3 or 4 years, I'm really trying to explore and find what I like, because I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Yeah. I like that.
Oh man, big time. So I just I don't know, I've been really exploring. Something I found I really enjoy is hiking. We go on lots of hikes with my boys. It's active, gets us out in nature.
Yeah.
We all enjoy it. We're close, no electronics. It's really fun. Recently, I'm really into learning languages, so I'm starting one right now.
Wow.
And it's a challenge, but I really enjoy it.
I might have to take a class. Can you teach me how to speak English? Because I have a hard time with it quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a struggle, but I really enjoy it, and I anything crafty. I love to do stuff with my hands. I like to be busy, and I draw with my boys, and I like to work outside. I mean, I just like to be staying busy. Yeah.
Busy. Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Now you've had some challenges going on in your life too, right? The past, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that is one of the things that we talk about a lot on this show. As I said there at the beginning of the show, you and I shared a little bit. So you kind of know my struggles with my wife's alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that you were fighting is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind sharing on that a little bit, or?
Yeah, for sure. Me and my husband, we just had 9 years anniversary in
Congratulations.
April. Yeah, it's a big step for us.
Yeah.
It was a struggle getting there, but we didn't think we were going to make it, but we're 9 years, and
well, good
we're
for
doing
you.
really well. But yeah, my husband is a sex addict for, I mean, I don't even know how many years. I mean, it started when he was 8, and it was off and on throughout his life. And then when we got married and had kids, when I had my first, it just came back in full blown, because I think just the stress of being a dad and the new, the responsibility and all that just was so overwhelming to him. It just came back full blown. And he didn't tell me about it until I think I was 2 months away from having our second.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That had to be a shock for you.
Well, honestly, it wasn't.
Really?
Because I suspected something,
Okay.
I noticed a big change after we had our first. And he was very distant. And I didn't know what that was called at the time, but since going through therapy and getting, lots of help and stuff, it was, some people refer to it as sexual anorexia. And so he really pulled back, isolated, wouldn't let me in. We didn't connect at all. Like, it was really heartbreaking for me, because I thought something was wrong with me. I was taking it personal. But I finally, at the end, I was like, right before my second was born, I wrote my husband a letter, because we didn't talk. He was isolated. So I wrote him a letter, and I said in there, I was like, something's wrong. I've tried and tried and tried to get you to open up to me, but you're not. So what, maybe a letter may help you be more comfortable to open up.
Yeah.
So I basically said, you're either cheating on me, you're gay, or you are, I don't know. I was like, something is wrong. And not that there's anything wrong with, all those, but it's just, I was like, something is off.
Yeah. You were just trying to figure out what.
I was like, what is going on with you? Because he just pulled back and didn't want to touch, nothing. And so I finally, anyway, after I really nagged him a lot to get him to, I'm like, just respond back. And finally he sat down with me, and he's like, yeah, I'm back in my addiction. And at first it was like such a relief to be like, I'm not crazy,
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like your worst nightmare just came true, because living in Utah, that, porn addiction, it's such a hard, I don't know, like such a stereotype. And at the time I had that stereotype, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? What are people going to think? And you're so worried, and we can't tell anybody, keep it a secret. So, and he didn't want anyone to know either. It's just, he's like, I can do this. I will figure this out. Don't worry about it. And of course I'm worrying about it,
Well, yeah. How can you not?
Anyway, long time after that, you start as the partner of an addict. I'm sure you've experienced this similar, where you start obsessing, you start, trying to catch them. You try to,
you start going into their life.
Yeah. And I felt like, I'm like, I feel like I'm being the parent. I've got you know, at the time we had 2 little boys, and I'm like, I feel like I've got 3 kids.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like I'm always parenting. I'm always trying to dig into his life and check his phone, the computer, you know.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I was like a crazy woman.
It consumes you.
It does.
Yeah.
And I was just losing sleep. I had the worst anxiety attacks. Anyway, it got really bad. And then anyway, we just kind of muscled through it, you know, white knuckling it the whole time. And then when was it? It was we call it our D-Day, but it was 5 years ago. That one week I found out I was pregnant with my third, and he got caught. A man messaged me and said that my husband had been talking to his wife, and I was just shattered, you know, when you find that out, you're like, wait a minute, I thought he had this under control, you know, and we'd been doing 12-step, we had been in therapy, nothing specialized, nothing. It was just like, oh, we're doing what we're supposed to get by, you know, this should work, you know. And when that happened, I just was like, I was so devastated. I just cried and I kicked him out of the house, you know, like we were separated for a long time. And then that's when we really dug in and got into a specialized therapy group called LifeStar, and I liked it because it focused on the spouse and the husband. It wasn't just we only focus on the addict and the wife, you know, or the spouse of the addict just kind of takes care of themselves.
A lot of times we're pushed in the corner.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, what about me? Like, I'm so traumatized by this, you know?
Yeah.
And just from books and stuff I've read, you know, they say that the spouse of the addict, they get PTSD. I mean, it's like, you know, the war, you know, oh my gosh, you know, the people from like that came home from Vietnam or World War II, they had the PTSD from it. And they say it's the same for the spouse.
Yeah.
But it's just different, you know, obviously.
Well, it's the anxiety of things. It's the wonder. It's the worry. Yeah. Is it me? It's the embarrassment.
Crazy making.
There's so many things that happen when you have a loved one that's battling an addiction. Because I remember when my wife was going to the Phoenix, her therapist finally called me in and sat down with me to have a talk. And after we were done talking, she called my wife back in, and she's sitting there going over some stuff, and she goes, your husband has a small form of PTSD. I'm looking at her like, crazy. I don't have PTSD.
What is that?
And then as she started explaining it a little bit more, I'm going, oh my gosh, because I'm pretty energetic and I go to a lot of networking things. And when I walk into a room, man, it's just like my energy is 1,000%. And I'm going around hugging people and talking to people.
Yeah.
And I would leave there and I'd still feel, I mean, usually I would leave and still feel that same way. But when I was so engaged with my wife's addiction, as I said before in the show, that I started going down that same rabbit hole she was going down, I would leave and be so exhausted. And I was exhausted because I was putting on a fake, even though that was me, but I was doing my best to show people I'm still me. But people who know me started pulling me off to the side going, hey, are you okay? Because there's something going on. I'm like, oh, yeah, everything's great, you know. But there would be times I would find myself just sitting on the couch, just zoning. Other times I would find myself, I'd just start tearing up. Why, I don't know. Other times I would be so flipping angry and so frustrated and so irritated. I mean, oh my gosh, the irritation. I would take everything out on my wife. Everything. And that's not what she needed. She needed a little bit more love and support. But I was so angry and so disappointed that Oh yeah. I mean, if she even dropped a little teeny piece of food on the floor, I was freaking.
Yeah.
I mean, which is bad.
Mm-hmm.
So is that kind of like the same thing that you were finding yourself into?
Mm-hmm. Just hearing that, you're like, oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Just that, yeah, like you cry over the littlest things. You know, my kids be watching TV show and I'm sitting there crying in the back. I'm like, why am I crying over this? This is ridiculous. And then the next moment I'm just fuming and obsessing and it got so bad. I remember our landlord that we were living in, the apartment we were living in, they let us know that, hey, we're selling it, you guys have a month to get out. So we had to move really quick, and so we moved in with my husband's family, and at that same time is when everything came down. That was the D-Days when I found I was pregnant, and we moved all in the same month.
Oh, geez.
It was so hard. And I remember getting to a place where I was really suicidal. But the only reason I didn't take my life was because I was pregnant. I'm like, I can't. That's what stopped me. I was like, I cannot do that because I have another person in me, you know?
Yeah.
And it kept me going. Like a part of me is like, I feel so bad that I'm sure all that stress and anxiety he's suffering from it today because they feed off everything that the mom goes through. But at the same time, I'm like, he saved my life, you know? It was such a hard, dark time for me. Like just thinking about it, every time I do, I get choked up. It was such a hard time. I mean, I don't even remember my two older kids very much like that. It's like a vague memory. Like I was so absorbed in myself and what my husband was going through. Everything else is just a blur. And I feel like sad that it robbed me of that. But at the same time, I feel like that's when I hit my rock bottom and I was like, I've got to do something about this. I have to take responsibility for me.
Yeah.
And stop trying to just focus everything on my husband.
Trying to fix them.
Yeah, because I was suffering and I was putting everything into him. Fix him, you know? Yeah. And I remember we went to our first day at this Lifestar therapy. It's group therapy. And then they also have the individual therapy that you do on the side. But the first day I remember he's like, do you have any questions? And I was like, I don't have a question, but this better work. And I was so pissed. I just looked at him. I'm like, this better work. And he was like, he kind of laughed at me and he's like, well, you got to trust the process.
Yeah.
And I was like, whatever that means, you know. I was so mad. I was so angry because I was like, this is all his fault. I don't deserve this, you know. And we were separated still, but we went and we went through that therapy program and it ended up towards the end it had served its purpose and we needed to move on from it. So we went and got a specialized therapist that was CSAT certified and also an EMDR, and more specifically in enmeshment. And I can talk about that a little bit later, but but I guess the things that in our recovery, I know everyone's is so different, but at the same time, everyone can relate so much.
Yeah.
You know? But there's 3 things specifically that changed our recovery completely. And it was the EMDR, the enmeshment, learning about the family enmeshment, and the learning how to communicate, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I can talk, but
no,
I don't know if you had something you want to add.
No, I mean, we've talked about communication on our show before. I mean, we had Darlene from the Craft Family Support Group that was here, and we're actually going to have another person from USARA that's going to come in and talk a little bit more about it. One thing, when you were sitting there talking about you were thinking about committing suicide, I was tearing up with you. And it's a shock to me because my wife was battling alcoholism, and it's a living hell. And as again, we've said on this, addiction is addiction. Your husband battled sex addiction. It's a living hell. Mm-hmm. So to hear you say that's what you were thinking about doing, literally, I mean, I still have goosebumps on me, because where that took you, where that addiction took you, I mean, I hope our audience gets this, because when you are on the other side of the addiction, we can't stress this enough. You go with that addict, whatever that addiction is, you go down that same, I'm just going to say it, that same damn rabbit hole, because it consumes you so much. Mm-hmm. And it's so sad how we let it take over our lives. And I like what you said, that you finally took responsibility and you finally said, okay, enough's enough. Mm-hmm. That's the same thing. I mean, I wasn't pregnant, of course, but what saved me was a phone call. Mm-hmm. And the reason why that phone call saved me is because my screenshot of my 2 daughters and my 3 grandkids. See, now that's where I get emotional. I was thinking about taking my life and taking time away that my daughters and my grandkids have with me because of what somebody else was doing. That's how bad these diseases take over your life. It takes over the whole family, basically.
It literally
so
does.
I like that you used the pregnancy not to go forward with it. Glad you're here. I'm glad I've had the opportunity to meet you. And I'm glad for that phone call. I still wish to this day I could remember who called me, because I would give them the biggest damn hug, because that saved my life. But it also helped me get a hold of somebody who helps people in that situation. And she really helped me get through and started leading me down the right path to get away. And luckily my wife was arrested again, thrown back in jail. That gave me that peace to where I could start taking care of some things, and start trying to get out of the lease of the apartment, because the negative energy, I mean, I couldn't stand walking into my apartment anymore. I mean, as soon as I did, it was just like crap was just being thrown on top of you, because if people don't believe in energy, start believing in it. You can cut through it. Yeah. And, I found another place to live and things like that, and got my life going. And I'm so glad to hear that you opened your eyes and you saw that same thing.
Yeah. And I feel like since when we finally kind of made it over the top of that bridge, you finally see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you're like, oh my gosh, there is actually healing.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the middle of it, you're like, this is the rest of my life. Like, but deep down, you're like, I refuse to accept this is my normal.
Yeah.
I don't even know what recovery looks like. I don't even know. And at the time, I didn't know anybody who had gone through it. I was like, do people even make it out of this? And I had therapists left and right, family members left and right saying, leave him, divorce your husband.
Yeah.
And just deep down, I was like, I can't. And I don't know if that was the, the unhealthy, measurement, or the I don't know what it was, but I just was like, I cannot leave him. And I got to see this to the end. And there was one time in particular, I had made up my mind. I was like, I can't trust him at all. Zero trust. Because he had lied to me so many times, covered it up. Then I find it, you know, and it just feels like you're getting hit with a bat every single time. And I'm like, why do I even get up anymore?
Yeah.
I don't want to get hit again. I'm tired of this. And I remember I had made up my mind to divorce him. I was like, I'm leaving. I had a place I was going to go, a job I was going to get. I already had family members that were willing to watch kids. And I remember just this feeling that was like, go to your room and pray. And I went and locked myself in my boys' room, and I just sat on their bed, and I'm just sobbing my eyes out. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. I'm leaving him. And my grandma passed away earlier that year, and I could feel her in that room. And she's like, don't leave him. God knows his heart. God knows he will make it through this. And you will too. Don't leave him. And I know that's not for everybody. I know I've had friends that are like, God tells them that they need to leave him because that person won't change and it's going to just drag them down, you know. But for me, it was, I know his heart. I know he's going to keep going, even though you can't see it. I can.
Yeah.
So I was so mad. I was like, no, I just want to leave and be done with this, you know. But I didn't. I stayed and worked it out, obviously. But that was a huge turning point for me. Was I need to see this through, and I know that God is in all the details. He is.
Yeah.
And this is such a sacred challenge and trial that my husband and I have gone through. And we thank God every day that we've gone through it, because now we are so closer. I didn't even know that existed, you know. I didn't know it was possible. At the time, I didn't even know how to conjure it up in my mind to even know that. Like, people would talk about it, but I couldn't even relate even a little bit. And now we're in this place where we're doing so good. And he's sober now. He hasn't had a relapse in 19 months now.
Wow, good for him.
And it is amazing to look back. And I just wish people that are in the beginning, when they're in that pit, the damn rabbit hole,
yeah,
that they can see, that they, I guess, have faith and believe that there is another side of it.
Yeah.
You know, it may not even make sense, or you can't even conjure it up in your mind, but just seeing it from the other side, you're like, you can be happy. You can be okay, even if your spouse isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. It's possible.
You can connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
You can be happy no matter what happens.
Yeah.
And I had to reach that point where I was happy no matter what. If my husband left, or if I left him, or something happened, I was okay. You know?
I like what you just said there. So let's remember, we're going to stop for a quick break. But when we come back, let's start there, because again, I got goosebumps, because when my wife came back after I accepted her to come back underneath my roof, she came to me and told me I had changed.
Wow.
So we're going to take a quick break right now. Janessa, this is awesome. I mean, thank you so much for being here today. We would also like to thank our sponsor for this segment, High Point Coffee out in West Jordan off 7800 South and Redwood Road. These guys are awesome. I'm telling you. I know they've got some new customers because of this podcast. Matter of fact, Brad's one of them. I actually reached out to Brad yesterday, and he's like, you won't believe me, but he actually took a picture. He was at High Point Coffee. So Steve, everybody out there, thank you so much for your sponsorship. Greatly appreciate it. Guys, stay tuned. We're going to go in a little bit deeper and get into some deep stuff. So stay tuned with us. Thank you.
How do you start your morning? Start it with a cup of High Point coffee. Because no matter where you go or what you do, it's always better with coffee. High Point Coffee. What's your high point? Located on the corner of 7800 South and Redwood Road in West Jordan. And a special thanks goes out to our partners in Oxford, Mississippi.
This is Gregory, owner of Lift Up Concrete, proudly serving the Wasatch Front for the last 12 years, lifting sunken flatwork for both residential and commercial applications. Only fully trained professionals lifting concrete at your residence with the same quality of material and method used at every commercial job we ever do. Don't replace it, lift it. liftupconcrete.net, 801-792-4535. Contact us at liftupconcrete.net, or if you're looking for a complimentary quote, 801-792-4535. Again, 801-792-4535. Again, this is Gregory, Lift Up Concrete Lifting.
Hello, my friends. This is Brad Neufeld, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the Resilience Talk Network. You can listen to my show, Resilience, every morning, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. On my show, we will be discussing what it takes for you to overcome the day-to-day challenges that all of us face in life, as well as some of the devastating ones that may lead us to feelings of hopelessness and despair. It's my goal to provide you with the tools and skills that you need to overcome anything that is thrown your way. To find out more about my show, visit our website at www.resiliencetalk.com. That's www.resiliencetalk.com. And as always, until we meet again, go for everything that you want in life and make it happen.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the other side of addiction. Al Richards here, and I am definitely missing my host, Lori Warburton. We wish her the best and hope everybody's doing well in her family. And we have our special guest here today, Janessa. And I tell you what, the first half of the show was phenomenal. I mean, really. So before we went to break, gosh, see, I had it right before we even come back, and now I'm going blank. So we were talking about how things have gotten better for you and your husband. Mm-hmm. Some of the stuff that you were sharing, like people telling you, move on, you'll find somebody better, you don't deserve this. I was getting the same thing. I was having people say, yeah, you deserve better, Al. And yeah, I do deserve better. I don't deserve going through this crap, and that's what I'm telling myself. But at the same time, something was keeping me there. And I was doing a lot of praying, asking God why I kept going through this. And finally, the light bulb went off. I finally started realizing things that I was doing wrong. Mm-hmm. I started having to fess up for what I was doing instead of blaming my feelings, everything that's happening in my life, financial issues. Stop blaming everything on my wife, mm-hmm. and start going, okay, it's time to change something. When she got out of detox and everything this last time, the last time she drank, it messed her up bad. I mean, I think she was pretty doggone close to death. It almost killed her.
So scary. She
got out, lost a lot of her motor skills. I mean, she was walking weird, couldn't talk right. Went on for couple weeks, called my uncle. My uncle said he would do a blessing for her. He did a blessing for her. Things started kind of changing, but I remember after 2 or 3 weeks after I had let her back in, she come up to me and she goes, babe, you've changed. I'm like, what do you mean I've changed? She goes, you seem like you're just getting on with your life, like without me, even though I'm here. And I thought about it and I'm like, you know what? I am, because after this last time, I thought enough's enough. It's time I make Al happy. And you can either come with me, join me, or go somewhere and drink. I don't care, because now I'm going on with my life. And I started talking to her differently. So when she was sober, And she hit 5 months on Mother's Day, 5 months
That's
sober.
so awesome.
But I remember telling her when times after she got her head back straight again, I'd say, gosh, I really like it when you're like this. I like it when you're not drinking. You know, our conversation and our communication started changing. She went 13 months sober one time before, 4 years ago. I was in that same stage that you just said before break that you were at. We had a better marriage during that 13 months than it was when we got married. And even the 3 years we dated before we got married, I was the same way, going, damn, I didn't know a relationship could be like this. This is flipping cool. Because we were best friends. We talked to each other about everything. Nothing, no lying. Everything was shared. Even if there was a disagreement, we talked through it. We didn't fight through it. We talked through it. And then, of course, she decided to drink. Everything went downhill from there. Now we're back to that point where we're building back up. So before we went on break, you were starting to share a little bit about that. And then you were sharing these programs that you went to, right? I would like to know, because I've never heard of those. So I would like to know a little bit more. And I bet there's people listening that would like to know a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, I love your story. I love hearing what you have to say. Same thing. I just get the chills, like just hearing, because it resonates so much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so amazing that we can all relate so much, but it's so different.
Yeah.
It's such a fascinating dynamic.
Well, it's with the addicts, right? So the addicts know what they're going through. Doesn't matter, again, what the addiction is. It's the same for us. Right.
Yeah, exactly. We just go through the process at a different pace, different steps at different times, but you have to go through the steps. So something that, well, a few things. So we went to that program called Lifestar, and that's like a 4 or 5 year program. When we hit 2 years, we were like, we're really, we learned a lot. We got the basics. We learned what boundaries were. We learned how self-care was. We learned, how important it is to communicate. We learned just kind of an overall basic, and it was really helpful. But we hit a point where we're like, we've got to move on. There's something else.
Right.
We're done here. We need to move on to something else. And something that I heard on a podcast from a therapist, and they said, if you are with a therapist who says, I'm all of it, you stick with me, you don't go anywhere else, then you have the wrong therapist. They're like, you may be with a therapist for 1 year, you may be for a couple sessions, you may be there all the time. If it just, each therapist has their role to play in your recovery, and there's times you have to move on because you're like, I've gained everything I can from you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I have to move on. Anyway, the program we were in, the Lifestar, they kind of had that mentality of, we're all of it. Don't leave or you will relapse. So it was kind of scary leaving. We were like, God, we're going to go, they were like not happy with us. Like, don't you leave. Don't you leave. You're going to relapse. You guys are going to fall into that hole that everyone does when they leave. And we were really nervous, but we just kept feeling we need to go to someone else. And so we prayed and we researched, and we found this therapist that was a CSAT certified, sex addiction certified, specifically in that, and also EMDR. And at the time, I didn't know what the heck EMDR was.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because I don't know what it is either.
Yeah, and it is hard to explain. You can look up videos and stuff and explain, better definitions. But for me and my husband, when we go through it, it specifically treats people that have trauma, PTSD, because me and my husband had a lot from our past. I was molested as a child. I had dirtbag boyfriends that almost raped me, molested me, a lot of that stuff. And then my husband, same thing. He had a an uncle, and now he's an ex-uncle. He molested him as a child and all up until he divorced his aunt. And Tyrell, my husband, did not remember his childhood because it was so traumatic.
Oh, wow.
He had, and a lot of victims of abuse, sexual, any type, will have short-term or like a temporary like amnesia. And he had that. He couldn't remember anything from his childhood from 12 and earlier.
Oh, geez.
So when we started therapy, I was so confused. I was like, your addiction is so intense and so, like, at the time I thought, oh, we're not as bad, we don't have it as bad as so and so, we're good, we'll be fine.
Right.
But then as we were going through therapy and digging deeper, and there's a section of the therapy that we went through where you do the disclosure and you have to tell everything that's happened.
Yeah.
And when he did that, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so much worse than I thought it was. And it just blew my mind. I'm like, we need a lot of help.
We're just like the Millers.
Yeah. I was like, we're worse off than they are. Like,
goodness.
It was so bad. And so we, when we found that out, I was like, Tyrell, what happened? Something must have happened to get you to this point, because this just doesn't happen, on its own. Like, it doesn't just pop up, you have an addiction one day. I'm like, what happened to get you to this point?
Yeah.
And he couldn't remember anything. He's like, I don't know. So as we did therapy and EMDR, it's with your eyes. They do, it's like rapid eye.
I know what that is. Okay.
And it
That's
helps
what you mean.
Yeah, that's what the EMDR is. It's
okay.
I cannot remember the acronym for it. I'll have to look it up. But it's like rapid eye movement where you go back and forth, and basically it helps you get out of that fight or flight, the lizard brain, and get into your prefrontal cortex. I can't say the word.
That's all right.
The front of your brain. And it helps you basically put those traumas in the past. There's a beginning and an end to them, and it doesn't continue. You're not reliving it every day, and you're not having that anxiety, that PTSD.
Yeah.
It basically puts a beginning. Oh, that was hard. Here's the beginning. Here's the end. Now let's move on. So it helps you work through those and not relive them every day, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's at least how it
absolutely.
was explained for me. Someone listening might be like, what are you talking about? But that's what it did for me and my husband.
Right.
So anyway, we found out through doing that, it brought up some memories. We did a lot of talking and research and everything, and read a lot of books, and come to find out, he started remembering. He's like, yeah, I was severely abused sexually by my uncle. And that's what started it.
Wow.
And then on top of that was what is, I feel like is what the number one thing that finally helped my husband get over that bump and stop relapsing so much, was working through the enmeshment, the family enmeshment. I don't know if you've heard of it. Maybe
the enmeshment. It's
okay.
For AA, it's more of like the amends, where you have to make an amends to everybody you feel like you've really, really hurt. Is it kind of like the same thing?
So it's the family dynamic.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I know that in a lot of therapy groups, the 12 steps and the one we were a part of, they talk about the unhealthy family dynamics for sure. But this one we found, it's through Kenneth Adams, Dr. Kenneth Adams. And he has a website. He's got lots of books, but it's called healing and working through enmeshment. And there's several types of enmeshment. There's, mother-son enmeshed. There's father-daughter enmeshed. There's parent-child. There's sibling. I mean, there's all forms of it. But what they've found, and this was on his website, that a lot of addicts have a unhealthy enmeshed relationship with a parent. And in my husband's case, it was a mother, sister, and him that had this really unhealthy dynamic and relationship. And it was really unfortunate. I mean, I love my in-laws, but with the enmeshment part of it, what happens is, there's an unhealthy relationship with mom or dad, and they're not receiving that fulfillment from their spouse. Things aren't going well, so they put it on the child, and they become that emotional surrogate spouse or father or mother type of a thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So and what enmeshment is exactly is where you can't really identify you are so wrapped up in the emotions and the well-being of your parent or sibling that you cannot separate it. And so their needs, their feelings, the loyalty you feel towards them goes above your own needs. And a lot of people, in order to escape that, will turn to sex addiction, alcoholism, any addiction, really, gaming. They will retreat to that to escape and to get some type of fulfillment because they feel so suffocated.
Wow.
Yeah. And so in my husband's case, and by the way, he gave me permission to share this, so I'm not just
okay.
He supports me 100%, and he's been awesome. But anyway, he his sister, oldest sister, had an unfortunate, her husband committed suicide right before my husband came home from his mission. And they were really, really close before he left. And he also was with his mom. And when he came home, he felt just so suffocated. He couldn't, all that pressure and weight, because he was the only son of, there was him and then 5 girls. So he was kind of they call it the golden savior of the family.
Got it. Okay.
So he had this impossible expectation to fulfill when he came home, and he was like, I can't do it. And he needed an escape. And that's where he met me. We were set up on a blind date by my sister. And so 1 month after he came home, he met me, and then I was his escape. And at the time they were, and his sister was mourning the loss of her husband, which was awful. It was so traumatic for the family.
Yeah, I bet.
But she needed a replacement, like she wanted my husband to be that, to fill in.
Yeah.
Which
to
I
be
don't
a rock, basically.
exactly,
right?
Which I don't blame her, but at all. But at the same time, like, when you're married, you have to move on. And the thing about enmeshment is that they put that relationship, that loyalty, above any other. So above wife, above themselves. And it becomes very unhealthy. And I have the definition exactly. I took a picture of it because I'm like, I don't remember this. If you don't mind me reading it.
No, absolutely. Please do.
Okay. It says, and this is straight from Dr. Kenneth Adams' website.
Okay.
And he says, being enmeshed means you are over involved with your parent at a cost to your own needs and relationships. Oftentimes, your parents' problems feel like they're your own, and you may feel obligated to fix them before you can attend to your own life and needs. You may feel responsible for your parents' happiness, which in turn creates an intense loyalty to your parent over most other commitments. The weight of enmeshment can cause you to feel that no one understands you and understands your bind, because you are the only one who can help and be there for your parent. And it also, like I said, can go along with a sibling too. So he had that with his sister and with his mom, where he felt that weight of, I have to be this for them. And it's a generational thing. You know how they say addiction isn't a generational thing?
Yeah.
Same with this. It's a generational thing. And And a lot of the time, and I've talked to so many women who are going through the exact same thing. And I really, my heart goes out to the in-laws and the wife, but a lot of the time they will take it out on the wife because he changed when she came in.
Yeah.
And so you kind of get the brunt of it. So I'm the crazy daughter-in-law.
You're the one that caused the problem.
I did. I stirred that pot. And it's not that I wanted to.
Right.
It's just that it was unhealthy. I felt that I was second always.
Yeah.
And my husband didn't like it either, but he didn't know what else. And he felt that intense guilt and responsibility to fulfill for his sisters and his mom. And it was a huge battle. It was, and I felt, I mean, I'm sad because it did not go down well. I mean, we still have a very rocky relationship, but I have a lot of hope that it will turn around and be good someday. And I feel like it is on that path.
Yeah.
But there was a time we had to separate. And our therapist told us, and he walked us through it, and he's like, you have to become whole. You have to first get to know yourself. You have to go through this crazy identity crisis, where you're just like, I've got to find out who I am. What do I even like? There was a time my husband's like, I don't even know what I like to do. I know what my mom and my sisters like to do. I know what they want. I know what they need, but I don't know what I need at all.
Wow.
The only thing he could turn to was his addiction. So, anyway, he went to this boot camp thing that Dr. Kenneth provides for men, because there's for men and their mothers, and then for daughters and their fathers. And he went to that, and it was so amazing, the change when he came home.
Really?
He was like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is Tyrell. This is the real Tyrell. And he was like, I need to take responsibility for my life. I need to take responsibility for my feelings. I am my own person. It was like he all of a sudden had hobbies, and he was like it was Tyrell. He wasn't doing anything for anyone else because he felt guilty or pressured or obligated. It was like, I want to do this because I want to do this. I want to help people because I want to help people. And there was crazy cycles we had to go through. I mean, we had we like to refer to one of the cycles that we were through recently, the F it cycle,
The F it cycle.
where you're just
I
F
like that
the
one.
world, you're like, I don't
no
even
kidding.
care anymore, know? And we went through that. And then there's the extreme guilt you feel because you're like, I'm just letting everyone down and such an awful person. And then there's the, you're so strict on your boundaries. You want to let everyone know what they are, and then you don't have enough. And I feel like it's just this pendulum where you're going back and forth, and eventually you'll find your middle. You'll go to your extremes. You'll go to each side, but you will find your middle. But you have to make those mistakes. You have to go through the process, the cycle, in order to find your middle, your core, your center.
I look at it all as it's like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I mean, you start out and you're and you're peeking up on that hill, and then it's that rush going down, and then some of them can be a little rough and you're jerking around. At the end of it, you just come to this nice little smooth stop. And the way you explained it with the pendulum, same thing, because you do have to go through those. To me, that's part of the growth.
Yeah.
It's the growth process. If you don't go through those, you're not going to get to where you want to be. You have to, and somehow you have to figure out a way how to get yourself through those without going back to where you started.
Yeah.
And with the enmesh, right? I'm saying it right, with the enmesh.
Yeah, enmeshment.
Enmeshment. The way you explained it, I don't know, I felt like I was going through that too. I mean, more of it was like with the family members, but us being on the other side, it's almost like we are doing the same doggone thing, right?
Yeah, just maybe called something different.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we should come up with our own name.
I know, because I've heard
Right?
people talk about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the exact same thing. It's just they say it different.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
And this is some good stuff that you've shared, and one thing, you listened to our show, our third episode with Brianne Davis. And I was asking her the question. I'm like, whenever I heard of sex addiction, I always thought it was the man, because that's usually what it was, due to pornography and different things like that. When she shared that 7 years ago, now this was 7 years ago, 38% of the people with sex addiction were women. I was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
Are you serious? And she goes, it's probably around 50, or if not over 50% now, how the shift is happening. And I don't know if it's because what's out there anymore. I mean, there's all kinds of different things, but there's always a turmoil that I have found by listening to addicts talk or share their story. Something's hit them, like you just said, at a younger age, and it stayed with them, not even realizing it. It's because, like, I've talked to people, even when I've done some of my speaking stuff, it's like, yeah, you just don't wake up one day and go, you know what? I'm going to be an alcoholic, or I'm going to be a sex addict, and I'm going to be the best damn one you'll ever find. And you start working your ass off to be the best one.
Yeah.
It's something that starts out really slow. And then it gets to that certain point before you realize where it's taking you, and it's also weird. I've been finding out since I've been doing this, it takes somebody else to kind of open our eyes, whether it's a therapist or another loved one or somebody that we trust. So I grew up with a bad temper, especially during my teenage years. I mean, one little teeny thing would set me off, and whether it was you or somebody else, I was coming at you full bore like a tank. I didn't care how big, how small. I put holes in walls, holes in doors with my fist. One day I hurt somebody that I cared about, and while they were laying on the floor holding their stomach, I'm like, the hell am I doing? I don't want to be this type of person. And this was in my mid-20s. And I remember, okay, I'm going to go to a therapist. So I go to a therapist, and I went to her for about 6 months. But I remember one of the, what word am I looking for? One of the things she did with me is she put down this piece of paper, and it had all this like a circle and all these little paths. And there was 2 paths. One went this way and one went that way. And she knew how to work me up. And so she'd start talking things, start saying things and asking me questions. And pretty soon I could feel myself, my knuckles clenching, and I could feel my teeth grinding. She's like, how are you feeling? I'm like, what the hell are you asking me how I'm feeling? You can see how I'm feeling. You're doing this on purpose. You're trying to piss me off. And she goes, you're right. She goes, so on this chart, tell me, which way would you go? So right, you're pissed as hell, what you just said, or left, you're not going to get pissed. I went, what? She goes, I just asked you, pick which one you want to go. And I'm like, well, right now it's this one. And she goes, but why wouldn't you want to go this one? Because wouldn't you be happier? And I remember that light bulb went off, and it was like, I have a choice.
Yeah.
No shit. It's that simple. I have a choice. I keep going this way. I didn't realize that I could actually go this way because that's how my life was.
Yeah. And
well, I've been watching my wife go through her process and her struggles. It's like it's the same thing. She finally woke up one day and went, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go this way. No matter if there's rocks in the road or whatever, I'm going to climb them. I'm going to go around them. I'll go under them if I have to, but I have a choice. I can actually go this way. But her mindset is totally different than what it was before. So she had to have that shift up here before she could make that shift down there.
Yeah.
So
I love that there's the choices. It's the window. Yeah. I call it. You have that split second And some people have a really big one and some just like little sliver. And you're like, I have that split second where I can choose faith or fear, basically. Am I going to respond or react, And I have the same thing. I've got a temper, believe it or not.
I would have no clue. I'm serious.
I do. I've always had a temper. And that is something that exact same thing that you said, it's like that window.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so crucial. And some days I feel like my window is gone. And other days I feel like it's really big. But I'm always trying to have that window so that I can have that hit in the head where you're like, oh my gosh, okay, I can choose.
Yeah. So I was at a networking group. Matter of fact, it was called Women in Business. I went to a Women in Business, and guys are allowed to go as well. And they had this gentleman get up and talk, and he's a negotiator, does work, negotiates with businesses and things like that. And he's like a nuclear engineer. I mean, this guy's bright. During his presentation, on the screen, it pulled up the 5-second rule. And I have completely forgot all about that because I learned that in a class I took like 6-7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I started using it on the way over here because something happened on the way over here with my wife's prescriptions and things like that kind of got me worked up and going. And the light bulb went off and I went, oh, the 5-second rule. So deep breaths, 5 seconds, ease out a little bit. That helps.
It does.
I mean, that 5-second rule, it's there because it works.
Yeah.
I mean, it calmed me down so quick. And now when my wife's going to start feeling it, I'm going to start sharing that. She'll probably say, oh, it's another one of your damn things again. but at least now she's keeping open-minded. But, yeah.
Well, and I think that's huge to have that awareness. I think getting out of that denial that, oh, I don't have that problem, or that's not me, it's not as bad, or, so-and-so's is worse.
Yeah.
When you finally are aware and you just flat out admit, I've got this problem and it's bad, that's where the magic happens. That's when you can start changing. And I love that because it's like, yeah, I've got a temper, or I've got an addiction. I struggle with this. Who freaking doesn't struggle with something?
Exactly.
Just because mine looks different than yours doesn't mean we all don't are struggling something. It's just some are more outward than others. But that being aware, and that's something that was so huge for my husband and I and learned in our therapy, is we finally became aware, like what physical signs, emotional signs, mental signs do we see that get us to relapse or to yell or to do something, how can we prevent it? How can we go back and say, this is where it started. This is where it starts for me. And a lot of time we're not even aware until it's too late. So a tool we learned in therapy that I really loved was they had us build a first aid kit, an emotional first aid kit.
Wow.
So what I would do is I put it on my phone, and some people would have a physical box, like a little Mento or, mint box or Altoid box that they would keep the little thing in. But you would have something you can see, so like a picture that puts you in a happy place. On my phone, I had a podcast episode that it just made me happy every time I listened to it. A song, picture of my boys, a talk that I really loved, and just a quote, stuff that would uplift me. And so whenever I could feel that coming on, I would open it and read through it, and it would bring me down. And my husband did the exact same thing. Whenever he was feeling tempted, when he was feeling like something's going on, I'm triggered, I'm going to go there, we got so good at recognizing what got us there, and we would stop it before it happened. And you can do that like we did with the first aid kit, or with self-care. And at first, when I learned self-care, I thought, oh, I can down a gallon of ice cream, I can binge watch Netflix, I've got self-care down. But it's not that at all.
No, not at all.
Getting up in the morning, getting out of bed, make your bed, brush your teeth, do your hair, get dressed. Don't stay in your pajamas all day. Not that that's, there are days for that.
Yes, absolutely.
But if you're doing it all the time and you're depressed and you're not, go on a walk, stuff that, eat food.
Yeah.
I know when I was going through it, I would go so long without eating because I just couldn't. I was so
Too
stressed.
upset. Yeah.
Or I just didn't care about what I looked like or what I was doing. I would, lay in bed all day. I would binge watch movies. I would eat crappy. I didn't care. I was like, why do I even try?
Yeah.
There's that was something that was huge for me and my husband was the self-care, learning what it really was. Doing the things you really don't want to because you don't feel like you're worth it or you deserve it.
Yeah.
And then the having your own time, because I always felt like, oh, I've got to give everything to everyone. I've got to help my kids. I've got to clean the house, got to make lunch. I got to, all these things. And it was like, take a time out. There's nothing wrong with taking a time out,
Yeah.
Whereas before it wasn't even an option because I'm such a people pleaser. I'm always wanting to do everything,
to help
make
everybody
else happy.
Yeah.
But when you're drowning inside, kind of like you're saying earlier on, you have that fake smile, and you're like, I'm dying inside, but I have to keep up this appearance.
Yeah.
And those things were huge for us in recognizing that the very first steps, so you can avoid it in the long run. And it takes a lot of practice, though.
Oh yeah, it doesn't.
So much practice.
It doesn't happen overnight.
No, I mean I'm still doing it today.
Yeah.
You can't stop, or I know where I go if I don't keep it up.
Yeah.
And it's not a pretty place,
Yeah, you've got to keep fighting. Even us on the other side, we got to keep fighting, changing habits. I started changing my habits.
Yeah.
I've got a morning routine that I go through every morning, and that has done wonders for me. I write down things that I want to manifest in a journal. At the end of the day, I write things down that I'm grateful for, and just changing these different habits, and I'm starting to see my wife starting to change habits of different things that she's doing too. But yeah, you got to keep fighting. I shared on Facebook just the other day, I post like positive things all the time, and one of the things that I shared, that one thing that took me a long time to see, my wife went to 7 rehabs. She'd go to a rehab and she'd do good inside the rehab, and then she'd get out and she'd do okay for maybe 1 or 2 or 3 months, and then something would happen and she'd go right back, and then would go through all the bull crap and all the hell again, and then she'd go through, and I used to throw at her, you don't want to get better, you don't want to get better, and she'd sit there bawl and just, yes I do. What I share on the Facebook that took me so long to realize, she kept trying. She didn't go to just 1 rehab or 2 rehabs and say, okay, screw it, I'm done, I'm never going to be sober again. She kept trying, and she kept trying, and she kept trying. And I think that's another thing that also kept me around, because at least she was putting forth that effort. Yeah, I was putting myself through the hell at the same time, but at least she kept trying. And I'm glad it took her 7 times. I wish it would have been done sooner, but I'm still glad it took 7 times, because I learned so much from it. Her addictions actually changed me as a person as well, how I look at life, and now how I deal with things that she does, because now I understand more of it. Will I ever understand her full addiction? No, never will. And I don't think any of us on the other side can ever understand the full part of the addiction, because we're not in their shoes. But I do know a heck of a lot more. And now I know also what to say to her if I see that she's struggling. I know there's times she doesn't need me. She needs somebody else that understands what she's going through. So, hey, why don't you get on the phone and call somebody up? Because I'll end up saying the wrong thing. It's just going to tick you off and probably push you over the edge, not meaning to, but.
Or sometimes there's really nothing you can do. And you're
not.
like, there's nothing I can say to really help you here. Reach out to someone.
Yeah.
I do that to my husband all the time. Like, I'm like, I just need to talk to you. And he's like, I'm so sorry. I love talking to you, but I can't.
Yeah.
So can you, reach out to someone else? Or I do that to him sometimes. I'm like, I can't. I'm so sorry. Reach out to so-and-so. You've got to have that backup. You can't just have that one person,
Well, we can't do this alone.
No.
I mean, either side, we cannot do this alone. And I tried for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you tried for a long time.
We sure did.
You cannot do it alone. I mean, people, we've said this on the show before. Don't be ashamed to ask for help. Again, somebody that you trust, though, it just can't be anybody, somebody that you really trust that's going to be there to listen to you. I don't think you need people that, oh, well, you should do this. And as the class we went to, they say you shouldn't should on people, right?
Yep.
Yeah. But find somebody that you can trust, that you can share it. And if it's not a family member or a friend, hey, reach out to us, because we've got people and resources. We're actually working on some new resources here to bring in for the show that we can refer to people. And would you mind sharing who it was that you guys went through, so anybody that's listening may be able to reach out to if they're looking for help?
Yeah. So the podcast that got me started on the EMDR, the enmeshment and all that was called Thanks for Sharing podcast. And the host was Jackie Pack.
Okay.
And then Jonathan Taylor. And they are both CSAT certified therapists in EMDR and everything as well. And we actually, Jonathan Taylor was our therapist that we went to. And he introduced Ken Adams to us, Dr. Ken Adams, who he actually works with him, and they put on these, retreats and these intensive therapy intensives that are like 4 days long. And Ken Adams has written books on the enmeshment and everything, and they do it together. And he referred all that to my husband. And I remember listening to their podcast, the Thanks for Sharing, and they had one specifically on the enmeshment. And I remember, because I've reached a point where we'd done the Life Start, we were going to therapists, but he kept relapsing. And I was like, what the heck are we missing?
Yeah.
But I could feel there was just something missing. We were so close. And I remember found this podcast. I listened to this episode. It's interesting how you get drawn to these things,
Yeah.
So I listened to it, and I remember pulling over the side of the road and just bawling my eyes out. And I'm like, this is it. And it made me I just could feel it. Just like, this is what we're missing, because I resonated so much with it.
Wow.
So I called him up, and he had a really long waiting list, and so did she. And I'm like, I don't care. We're going to this guy. And he luckily had an opening. We only had to wait for like a month or two.
Wow.
So we got into him, and we'd been seeing him for, I think, almost 3 years now. But we went through that enmeshment, and he walked us through it, all of it. And I remember getting to the point where I was like, I will do anything. And I didn't know it was going to be so hard with the family dynamic. I didn't even think about it. I always thought it was because of my husband's trauma, which definitely had that, and my trauma.
Yeah.
That's a huge key. That's what started the snowball effect, right? But the enmeshment was what did it when we went through that. And, with all respect to our families, like, not every family responds the same.
Yeah.
Some will treat it like a literal divorce, because that relationship, you don't go out of your role.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to my husband. Like, the entire family literally divorced us, and we don't get invited to anything. That was really painful. And, but we had to take that step. It was necessary to come to, and we even told them, we're like, this isn't the whole family. This is just the two family members that we're currently struggling with this with. we just need some time to rebuild. We need time to find ourselves. And then we can come back as healthier people.
Mm-hmm.
And they wouldn't have it. They're like, well, you're not going to keep that role. You're out. So we haven't been a part of the family in a long time. I mean, there's, you know, and he had to step back out of that role. He had to.
Yeah.
And I feel very confident that someday it'll work out. And I feel like things are coming together, and I don't judge him at all. I mean, there's a time I was really angry at him, but I'm like, looking at what they're going through, I can't imagine how hard it must be on their end, not understanding why, you know.
Yeah.
It would feel like such a betrayal.
That's the part, not understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing for me, is accepting the fact that I will not be understood, and that people don't have to, but I have to do what's best for my family.
Yeah.
And I went through something similar because, you know, I had a lot of enmeshment with my parents as well. But something that was so fascinating about that is we went through a really rough patch, and we didn't talk for a while. My parents, they were so frustrated. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't understand. You know, everyone has this idea of what help looks like and what recovery looks like.
Yeah.
And I remember telling them, I'm like, it's this way. I'm sorry, but this is what we have to do. And they were not happy with it. And we didn't talk for like 3 months. And I remember we finally came together, and we were all so mad at each other. But we were like, I remember my parents were like, you know what? We don't understand why you're doing this, but we want to be a part of your life, and we want to see you happy and successful. We're going to go through this with you. And
good for them.
They've walked through it with us, and they haven't always agreed on what we do, but I feel that support, and all my siblings backed me up, and everybody is like this, you know, and I'm not comparing and saying, oh, one's better than the other.
Right.
I'm saying families respond differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I fully anticipate and believe that one day it'll happen with Tyrell's family as well. And I love them. I don't judge them at all, because it's so, I don't know what they're going through. I don't know what it looks like for them.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's been really hard. They probably feel like we've stabbed them in the back, I'm sure. But it was absolutely necessary. And I know I didn't do it all right, and neither did he. I know we didn't, maybe,
But
you know,
do it
you
right.
can't.
Yeah. How
you
do
know?
you know? Yeah.
But I love that, you know, that people can heal, people can change. And that is something that I'm excited for people to see, is that me and Tyrell are completely different people. We are so different. We might have been these big jerks back then when we were going through our recovery. I mean, you're just tunnel vision, you know,
Yeah.
You're so involved. You don't really think about other people when you're in the depths of it.
No, it's because of all the crap that's on top of your shoulders.
You just,
Yeah.
you can't handle it. But when you finally come out of it, you're like, hey, people, I love people. You know, I want to help people.
Give me a hug.
And I'm very extrovert, I love people. I love to be around people.
That's how I am too.
I'm so fascinated, and so I just find so much energy and excitement in meeting people and stuff.
Yeah.
I completely lost that in our, you know, when we were in recovery. I couldn't be around people, just like what you said.
Yeah.
You walk away and you're completely drained. You know, my sister is always like, oh, I'm trying to get water out of a dry rag. It's not working, you know, and that's how it was. But I hope that people know that there are second chances. People do heal.
Yes.
People do change. And you cannot deny that to you cannot not believe that with people. Like I feel like some people just put the stereotype or say, oh, this is how it is and it's always going to be that way. It's not.
No.
It changes. People change. And I just wish people saw that. It's like,
well, and I wish people would, like you said, I wish people would see it and even give it a shot. Give it an opportunity, give it a look, you know, because I mean, I have completely changed from I mean, my wife and I, we've been together 15 years.
Mm.
And she told me years ago, she's like, you are not the same person that I met.
Mm-hmm.
And she's right. I'm not, because I have really worked hard the past 10, 11, 12 years to really change who I am as a person and how I look at people and how I interact with people. I mean, yeah. And no matter what you're going through, you hit the nail on the head. There is light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, my wife has said many times, you know, she's not seen our grandkids for 2 years.
Wow.
And my daughter and her husband have chosen that, you know, even though my wife was never drunk around the grandkids, but they have their reason. And as bad as it hurts me, that's their choice.
Yeah.
I can't go and try to change their mind. And my wife says, you know, my life's over. I'll never see the grandkids. And it's like, look, you didn't destroy everything in one day. You destroyed it in a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Now you are changing your life. It's going to take a little bit more time. It's going to take maybe the same amount of time, less, maybe more,
Mm-hmm.
to get back to where life's going to be. The difference is you're stronger, you're better, you look at life differently. So there is hope. There's always hope. Always. It doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter your race. I mean, religion, it doesn't matter. I've got somebody that's in the family that has struggled with years. And I love this. I love this person so dearly. And she's told me, you know, I'm 70 something years old. It's too late for me.
Mm-hmm.
No, it isn't. It's not too late. It's never, ever too late.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can change. I mean, if I hadn't have gone through everything that I've gone through, that my wife, we wouldn't be doing this podcast right now, probably.
Mm-hmm.
You know, none of this would be happening. My inspiration to want to go out and speak and talk about what it's like living with an addict, none of that would be happening right now. And like you were saying earlier before we started the show, you're looking for your nugget. You know, what is it? I've been looking for that for years. For years, ever since I left manufacturing 12, 13 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I got it. Took me all this time to figure it out. I was helping a bunch of other people build their business and do different things. But even though it was something I wanted to do, it's taught me a lot of different things. But I think it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I put my arms around my wife and gave her a hug. And I told her, I said, I just want to say thank you. And I was like, what? And I'm like, you know, everything that's going on in my life right now is because of you.
Mm.
And I'm saying that in a good way,
Yeah.
not in a bad way.
Yeah.
You know, and for her to even say, babe, I am so proud of you, because she supports me like your husband supports you.
Mm-hmm.
She was actually here on our show a couple of weeks ago, which
That is so
blew
cool.
me away, because Brad and I were
Mm-hmm.
talking about the difference between privately owned rehabs and state funded rehabs.
Mm-hmm.
And she just came in to, you know, listen. And she sat in a corner over there, put the headphones on. She's like, I ain't saying nothing. I don't even want to be on the screen. I'm like, okay, whatever. Brad and I started talking. Brad's kind of like going like this. And I turn around and I'm like, do you have something to say? And she's like, yeah. And she got right up to the mic and she starts talking.
That's
I'm going,
so cool.
wow, check this out, you know?
Yeah.
And so she's already grown,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So
That's so cool.
yeah, it's really cool. And I thought it was really cool too, that when I first reached out to you and said, hey, would you like to be a guest on our podcast? And you're like, well, me or both me and my husband. And I was like, what? And it's like, well, hell, we'll take both,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And to me, that takes a lot of guts. Anybody that comes on the show and shares, whether they're the addict or they're the person that's not the addict, it takes a lot of guts
It
to
does.
come out, talk about it, because some family members may be embarrassed that, and it's their own, the way I look at it is, if they're feeling away because of something said, because we don't use names, we don't say, hey, so-and-so did this or so-and-so.
Mhm.
it's their own mind making them feel guilty or making them feel upset or whatever, because we are here just to get the word out and let people know. Don't hold it in, because 2 people sitting right here on this camera right here was thinking about killing themselves because of their loved one battling an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
We're not the only 2.
Oh, and
there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people all around the world that are thinking about doing the same thing.
Yeah. And it is, I shared my story. I came out a few years ago on Facebook, and I'm like, me and my husband are dealing with this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a short little thing. I was like, if anyone wants to reach out to me, or if anyone needs help, I'm here. I mean, I'm definitely not an expert or a therapist or by any means, but I'll hold your hand. I'll hold that space for you, because I know how lonely it is. And I don't want you to have to go through that. And I had so many people reach out to me and be like, oh my gosh, I'm going through the exact same thing. And I just wanted to give him a big hug and just be like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Whether he leaves you or you end up together, you will be okay. Don't give up on yourself.
Yeah.
And something I just feel like I need to share, something that was really, so my husband's been sober. He hasn't had a relapse since for 19 months now. And that's a huge feat. And at first I didn't count, because I'm like, oh, we're just gonna go 3 months and then he's gonna have another one. Or, like I was with you. Yep. I can't go there. I'm like, I can't count.
Yeah.
But then as the months are going on, I'm like, what is that like? I'm counting in the months, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going almost a year. And I remember when it hit a year, I didn't dare say anything. I was like, I don't want to jinx myself. I don't want to like ruin this. I remember a year hit, and I went to Tyrell. I'm like, guess what today is? And he's like, what? I'm like, it's been a year. And he's like, what?
Oh, so you knew and he didn't?
He didn't.
Oh.
He didn't even know. He's like, oh my gosh, it has been. I'm like, we've got to celebrate,
No kidding.
You don't just pass up that. But we didn't say anything, because I don't know. For me, I was like holding my breath.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, you hope, but how many times you've hoped and you've been whacked in the head again or beaten down,
I used to tell my wife she kicked me in the crotch. You know how many times you've kicked me in the crotch?
Why do I want to get up again to get kicked again?
Why do Yeah, exactly right.
And anyway, so he went, we were going through all that intensive, and we were getting all that therapy, and we had to separate from, the family. And he was doing really well. He had gone 6 months, 7 months without anything. And we were doing so good. We were just on top of the world. He was doing so well in his business. He was a insurance agent at the time. Very, very successful in it. We were doing so good. We were about to buy our first house. Things were going so well. And this is what really tested whether he was in real sobriety or not.
Right.
We were about to close on our house, and we just had this feeling, get out of the contract, don't do it. I'm like, what? And we were so sad. I just remember crying. And then 2 days later, we got in a car accident, and my husband got a head injury. He, a car was coming down. It was snowing. We were going up skiing for my birthday, and a car came around the corner, was going too fast, wasn't looking at the road, slid off and hit us almost dead on. And my husband was able to just a little bit, and it hit his side, and his head went through the window, and
geez.
He got stitches and everything. And at first we didn't know how serious it was. That's a hard thing with head injuries, is you don't really know.
Usually takes a little bit of time.
Before you start seeing the long-term effects.
Yeah.
So we went, to the ER and everything, and things seemed like it'd be okay. But then all the symptoms started happening, and he had to be in a room, no lights, no phone, no electronics at all, because the screens, the blue light really messes and slows down your recovery. Everything. He was in a dark room for 4 months, and he couldn't work. He, this whole time, I'm like, this is a perfect recipe for a relapse. I'm like, all of this stress bearing down on us, he's going to relapse. Like I was just waiting.
Yeah.
And I didn't say anything because I don't want to be like, oh, now you're going to relapse and like be, like discourage him or anything. Yeah. So anyway, he goes through that 4 months and he was just, he slept. He had to take 6-hour naps during the day. He had to get 12 hours of sleep at night. Like I didn't see him. He was just locked in his little depressing room. We had to put sheets over the windows, make sure there's no light. Head injuries I didn't realize how horrible they are.
Yeah.
So a couple months in, he couldn't keep up his book of business anymore because as an insurance agent, you're on the computer 8 hours a day. And the doctors are like, no computers. So we prayed about it and everything, and we had to shut down his business. He had to give his book of business away.
Oh, wow.
He had to completely shut it down. And we had put everything into that business for 2 years. Everything. All of our money, everything. And it was doing so well. And then we had to shut it down. So we have no job and talk about stress on my husband, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then we're driving. We decided to go up in the mountains, and he can't drive very long. The doctors are like, you can only have him drive for a certain amount of time because it'll make him really nauseous. So we went up in the mountains. We were driving home and we hit a deer, totaled our second car.
Oh,
so we have no car.
And he's being tested, isn't he?
And then our landlord calls us and says, I'm selling it. You need to be out in a month.
Oh my gosh.
And you can't get a lease unless you have a job, right? You can't buy a house or anything like that. So we found a car with the money that we got back from our other one, and we had to move into my parents' basement because they have an apartment because we have no way of getting in. I had to take care of him and the boys. He could not watch the boys yet because of his head injury. And so I'm just holding my breath. I'm like, all of this stuff happening. Like he has, his family's not in the picture, lost his job, lost our other car, lost our, where we're living. We have to move into our in-laws apartment, into my parents' apartment. And I thought, no, how is he holding up on this? Like, this is a absolute disaster, perfect recipe for a relapse. And he didn't.
Good
and
for
everyone,
him.
And I had a lot of people be like, oh, maybe the accident was a blessing because now he can't look at the computer and have a relapse. And I was like, no, he was sober before.
Yeah.
He had conquered this before. You have no idea the amount of work, the amount of time, the amount of money that has gone into this prior. Like, this was just a test,
It was.
And he passed with flying colors, like he did it. Like, and even if he did have a relapse, I would still be like, oh my gosh, look how well you've been doing.
Yeah.
Like, this is incredible. Because before, any little stress, any little trigger, he was a goner.
Same thing with my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like that this has been such a, like, not that what we've been going through has been easy by any means. It's been hard. But I feel like what we went through before with the addiction really prepared us for it because, we're struggling a lot. Right now is hard. He's still recovering. He's trying to get back into work.
Yeah.
But it was nothing compared to the recovery, as hard as it was. We're like, this, not this is a walk in the park, but it's so much easier.
So much easier, yeah.
Than what we went through.
You've built up the calluses.
Yeah, exactly.
The strength that you have is so
we
much
have
better.
Those communicating skills. We prepared for this without knowing it.
Yeah.
We communicated to each other. We were there for each other. He knew exactly what to do when he was feeling tempted or feeling like, the urge or whatever. He knew exactly what to do. And it was the work we put into it. It's not this, God made us get in a car accident so that he won't look at porn.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
We go through these steps, and they're our challenge,
Exactly.
let's see what you've learned from this.
Yeah.
And you go from there. Okay, you didn't learn. Okay, well,
Go back.
we'll try
Try
something
it
else.
again.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm so proud of my husband. Like I'm so grateful he's, like what you said, he stuck to it.
Yeah.
Never gave up. Always got out of bed or got on that horse every day, to fight another day, to slay the dragons. It's he did it, and he didn't give up. And I know so many people that give up.
They throw in the towel pretty quick.
Whether like, this is me and I've accepted that, or they take their life, or they just, they put themselves in that place where they're like, I can't keep going.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that he didn't. I'm so grateful where we're at,
I'm happy for you guys.
It is amazing.
Really happy for you guys.
And I just want people to know that it is so possible.
So is that what you want to say as we get ready to get off? I mean, what advice can you give somebody, or a suggestion? I mean, you may have just said it, just keep fighting or believing,
Yeah, well, believe that there is another side. Believe that there is healing, even though you don't even know what it feels like or looks like, or even if you don't even have an example of someone that has
or you're
it.
not feeling it right now.
Yeah. You don't even know if you're going to make it in your marriage or relationship or whatever. And maybe you're not married and you're going through it, but there is always hope. There's always healing. And you just, like you said, you cannot do it alone.
No.
There's always someone out there to hold your hand and to help you. Whether, even if you don't have family members or close friends or anything like that, because of your addiction, you've pushed everyone away. There's us. There's so many resources out there that you can reach out and be like, I need the support. I need that. Don't give up. Don't throw in the towel. Do not. You are so worth the time, the effort, the money, and everything to heal.
Love it. That's great advice.
Yeah, that's something I just hope people see, because I know what it feels like.
Yeah. Well, Janessa, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks
what a phenomenal
me.
show. Absolutely. I know we've gone over, but it was such great information. I mean, we don't cut it short right at an hour. If it's flowing, we're going to let it flow. So thank you. So no, do not apologize. Thank you so much for doing this. And, hopefully our listeners, they'll get the gist of this, and hear what you had to share. Janessa said it, guys, there's hope. There really is. Life doesn't have to always be the way that it is, but you also have to make the choice to do something different. So Janessa, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime. So we also want to thank one of our other sponsors, Lift Up Concrete out of Kaysville. Hey, Gregory and his crew, these guys are on top of it. Lifting is a third to a fifth of the cost of tear out and replace. So if you got sunken or settled concrete, give Lift Up Concrete a call. I don't have their number, but they will be advertised on Resilience Talk Radio and also on this podcast. So we couldn't do this without our sponsors, and we wouldn't be able to do this without people like yourself, Janessa. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I have spaced off the last few times too. Thanks to Brad for all his hard work. Get on Resilience Talk Network. Check out what these guys have, because they've got a lot of good stuff on there. I listen to it as much as I can. I'm trying to get better at not letting the day get away from me and starting to listen to more of the podcast. So guys, stay tuned for next week. I really don't know what we're going to discuss next week. Lori and I haven't had a chance to talk about it, but I can guarantee that if you come and listen next week, it's going to be something phenomenal. I guarantee it. So guys, remember this: addiction is giving up everything for one thing. Recovery is giving up one thing for everything. Take care.